Around October of last year, I had the pleasure of solo traveling to Frankfurt, Germany, and it was a wonderful time. I talk about it a lot on this channel, and lately I've been basing my videos around being able to change your environment, change the position that you are in life to be where you're most comfortable. So I thought it would be good to actually react to a group of expats that actually live in Frankfurt, Germany, and show off their experience living in Frankfurt, Germany. Because just traveling to a country is one thing, okay? And then uprooting yourself from America and completely making your address in a foreign country is a whole other thing. And yeah, I think it would be just fun to react to this experience of this couple who are talking about Frankfurt, Germany. And just recount the experiences that I had in Frankfurt myself. Tell you, this sounds about right, this sounds about wrong. I did a lot of exploring while I was in Frankfurt, and I'm going to be wanting to do more future videos on different countries that I travel to, where expats are informing you guys what it's like to actually, be living in such an environment. So yeah, let's get things started with this video of this couple talking about Frankfurt, Germany. Let's get her done.
We are exploring the uber important German city of Frankfurt, and we're going to talk about what it's like moving, living, and working here. I'm Josh.
And I'm Kaylee with Expats Everywhere, the channel that brings you information and experiences from expats all over the world. So we're in Frankfurt. Why is it called Manhattan? Let's take a look at what this city has to offer.
Okay, so apparently it's called Manhattan, and that is a clever way to call it. Because the river Main is, that's the main river that goes through Frankfurt. And it does, like, some parts of Frankfurt do seem a lot like Manhattan. As a New Yorker myself, I mean, who best can confirm that it feels like Manhattan? It is like, Frankfurt is known as like the financial sort of district of Germany. So yeah, no, a lot of rich people go into this part of Germany. But yeah, let's keep things going.
One of the reasons that this city has the nickname Manhattan is because of all the skyscrapers that we see around the city. Another reason is because it sits on the river Main.
Germany is filled with bigger cities compared to Frankfurt, but living here will definitely give you an urban feel. Like Josh mentioned, you have the various skyscrapers and the river, but you also have more historical districts, and you're not too far from the countryside.
You might be surprised to learn
There is a lot of buildings that give it that urban feel, very close to very traditional looking buildings, which, it is like weird how like the environment changes so quickly in such a short amount of distance in Germany. But yeah, no, I like the traditional feel that they keep in the parts that, most of the tourists want to go to, because, people go to these kind of countries for the tradition, or that's why I would travel for a country, because the less it reminds me of America, the better. But yeah, it's good to have like that combination of, city life and, that German vibe that is, iconic for Germany. Yeah.
Learn that Frankfurt has one of the largest airports in all of Europe, and it's because of things like the stock exchange and the fact that it's considered the financial center in Germany.
But the city wasn't always built up like this, and actually in the 1950s, the Frankfurt Cathedral was the tallest building in the city at around 96 meters. But a lot has changed since then. Now, if you move here,
that Frankfurt Cathedral is amazing. If you ever are in Frankfurt, that cathedral is quite the visit. I went in there and like I just, I felt the energy, I forget, like, I mean, I don't think it was actually confirmed, but I'm pretty sure it was like, they practice Catholicism in Germany. I would assume like some form of Christianity, but that might be changing.
you can choose to live near the cathedral or some of these skyscrapers, especially if your work is located in one. But what are some other neighborhoods that you should consider? Well, you have options on either side of the river.
When moving to Frankfurt, you want to consider your lifestyle and which neighborhood will fit you. So let's break down some of the popular places around here and what there is to do there.
If you enjoy history and museums, you might want to live around this neighborhood. It's south of the Main and a large neighborhood to consider.
This neighborhood will have a different feel to the other side of the river, as it's more local and residential as opposed to the high rises and commercialism. There has been a lot of restoration of historical buildings, there are several traditional restaurants to try, and it's well connected by public transportation.
When I visited Frankfurt, I was rarely on that side of the river. It did feel more like city-like in that side of the river, and I mostly stayed on the north side of the river, which had which has the cathedral. But you know, it's not too far of a distance away. You do just have to like walk across a bridge, which, you know, I've shown in videos and photos past that it's not too hard to actually walk around. You know, Frankfurt is a very walkable city, and I didn't take the train at all in my visit to Frankfurt. But the area that they were just talking about it has a lot of nice restaurants, but I mostly ate on the north side of the river.
If you're looking for something upscale, then check this neighborhood, which also has historical buildings, but it's close to the city's bank towers along with the university campus and gardens.
There are a lot of top-notch restaurants here, so even if you don't want to live in this district, it's worth visiting for good food. This is another neighborhood to consider, which is going through a slow gentrification and is known for its theaters. It has a more industrial feel, but prices are lower here.
This district is becoming more popular though, so of course you might see rising prices because...
So I went to that zoo. It was a nice trip to the zoo. I saw gorillas, you know, all the basics that you would see at a zoo. There were lions, there were bears. Very, very interesting experience. Although I did go on a cloudy day, much like how it looks in this video here. So, I didn't experience, you know, the animals did seem like a little sleepy most of the time. They had a giraffe, but I think the giraffe was sleeping, but I did see a rhino. It was a fun trip to the zoo. I liked the gorillas. They reminded me of Harambe. Let's keep this going.
Because of this. These are just a few neighborhoods to consider. One note we want to make is although the train station is beautiful, we would not advise for you to live right around this area as it's not very nice. However, Frankfurt is a popular area for expats all over to move to.
This city is full of expats, with around 30% of the population here being foreign-born and coming from approximately 180 different countries around the world. So we're looking at...
Wait.
Is full of expats, with around 30% of the population here being foreign-born and coming from...
30% of the population is foreign-born. So 30% of that, of Frankfurt is 30%? Wait, I need to rewind that back just so I could hear it correctly.
Expats, with around 30% of the population here being foreign-born and coming from...
You know, I totally see that. I totally see that. You know, the people that I was seeing around there in those areas, you know, I think because there's a lot of immigration that is taking place in Germany. So that's why it is feeling a little bit less than, you know, Germany nowadays. Because and part of the reason why, you know, the people might not want to go to Germany because there is a lot of immigration, which, you know, is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're going for, you know, that country's experience, like the traditionality of that country's experience, you might want, you know, actual native people to that country. Something to think about, you know, some things to consider.
From approximately 180 different countries around the world. So we're looking at a diverse group of people here. So that means lots of opportunities for diverse food and to make friends from all over the world. What kinds of things can you do in Frankfurt?
Hanging out and exercising along the main river is quite popular, especially when the weather is better than this.
You can cycle, jog, or have a picnic. Maybe the winter is not the best time for these activities as the winter months are in the 30s and 40s and you might catch rain.
You know, it's usually like I think that's for all places. It's usually better to travel there in the summer areas or the springtime or summer times. Yeah, so that's for most countries. But yeah, it's usually very cloudy in Germany. There were very few sunny days when I went to Frankfurt.
There are times when you'll hit cold waves and it'll even snow, but generally it's a light snow. Obviously, there are days that can get cold or hot, but the average will stay between the 30s and 40s. It's uncommon for it to be foggy and gray.
The rest of the year still has some rain, but obviously not as cold of temperatures. The spring will teeter back and forth with temperatures and can be a bit unstable, but once you move into the summer, you can expect average temperatures to be between the 50s and the 60s, with possibly reaching into the 70s. You will catch some hot days too that will get into the 80s, but it's not generally like extreme heat in Frankfurt summers.
Then as the summer fades into fall, it will get a little cooler, but it's all quite pleasant. Just watch out for those rainy days as you slip into the winter months. For those of you who don't like hot weather, Frankfurt is a place to consider. Now, what else is there to do besides outdoor activities like pop-up flea markets and hanging out around the river? How about sitting at a bar or a cafe?
This is Germany, so what should you drink? Beer. Of course, you have other popular drinks, but you can't beat their domestic beer, which you can.
I did not try their beer. No, I'm hearing like that you should have tried their beer. I'm not a beer I personally. I drank their liquor, like their rum. I like their rum, and their wines, their champagnes. I didn't try their beer. I'm not a beer guy.
Can get for around €4. If you're not a beer drinker, then you have to try the apple wine. Of course, this is refreshing when it's warm outside, but can also be drunk all year round. You can also drink it steaming hot with cinnamon, and it's nice in the winter. It's a cider like no other and common for locals and tourists alike to drink.
This place is famous.
Yeah, I actually got their apple wine as a souvenir. They had like a souvenir shop that I could really recommend. If people comment about it, if they want a good souvenir shop in Frankfurt, I know a really good one. Just let me know. But yeah, no, they were selling apple wines, and yeah, it got me some.
There are loads of options for public transportation, from trams to buses to the subway, and there are even night buses, so there is some form of public transportation that runs around the clock.
With so many options, having a car really isn't necessary, and actually Frankfurt is known as one of the worst cities to explore by car because of all the one-way streets and parking being impossible.
So you can have.
Yeah, no, I could not imagine owning a car in specifically Frankfurt. I think many European countries, it's probably not ideal to have a car, but this especially, like I could not imagine having, like, there was like no places that I saw that would be easy to park. Like, you know, it does remind me of Manhattan because there's no parking at all, but like at least like you could use a car in Manhattan. But like here, you know, I did not see any good opportunities or real reasons why I would rent out a vehicle. Yeah.
Have a car to leave Frankfurt if you want. But other than that, take the many public transportation options. You can get tickets from the machines at practically every stop, or you can pop into the RMV ticket shop. You'll spend between €2 to €3 a ride depending on what ticket you're using and where you're going. There are also taxis and Ubers available as well.
It's common for Germans to learn English in school, so if you only speak English, you can still get around the city easily.
Yeah, that was Romerberg right there. But I would have to agree, you know, if you could take those did they call them trams or trolleys? They look like trolleys. Like I see those, like those outside like bus looking things, and they're attached to the wire up top. I call them trolleys. But or a tram. But yeah, I would suggest, you know, usually I would Uber. If you're only spending there like a week, like I would not spend the time learning their public transport system. Just Uber. It's pretty cheap, like compared to American prices, which is, you know, they're greedy over here in America. So if you're used to taking an Uber in America, way better to just, you know, Uber in Europe. Any European country is better than Ubering in America.
We do always recommend that you try to learn some of the local language when you move to a new place. So try to give German a go. This is great for those of you with kids because there are plenty of international private and public schools that will offer your kids a bilingual education. Keep in mind that international schools can cost upward of €10,000 a year.
All right.
Yeah, no, they're saying learn the language. I think Germany's one of those countries you don't actually have to learn the language for. Enough people speak English. Enough people assume that you speak English, especially when they saw me. You know, they just right off the bat speak English. Like there was very rarely a time where I ran into someone and they just only knew German. So, but maybe, you know, as an expat, I'm speaking as travelers, so they're speaking as expats. You know, maybe you got to learn some of the language. Maybe, you know, if you're an expat, I would say at least know some like beginner language words. If you're planning on, you know, you have to work a job in Germany, I guess.
Let's break down a few of the costs for you as you consider moving to Frankfurt. Housing will of course depend on several factors such as size, location.
Okay, so this is important. This is where we get into the meat of things, because there's some countries that people want to move to for the lower cost of living. But since they're calling Frankfurt Manhattan, Manhattan's pretty expensive to live in, so let's hear this out.
Furnishing, and more. But a one-bedroom apartment in the city center will be around €1,000, but probably a little more than that. And as you move out of the main areas, it will drop around to 800 to 900 euros.
For something larger like a 3-bedroom apartment in the city center, it will go up to around 2,000 to 3,000 euros and around 1,500 to 2,000 euros if you're...
So euros convert differently from USD. I might put something on the screen actually converting this to USD. I forget if the euro is actually stronger than the dollar. I think they're right about the same. Maybe euro's a little stronger, but yeah.
You're not as central. Utilities can run fairly high, so budget at least 250 euros for those. Again, this is just to give you an idea, as there are so many factors to consider which will either lower or higher your costs.
Like I mentioned before, you can get good beer for around €4. If you want to pop into an inexpensive restaurant, then plan to spend around €10. And a medium scale restaurant for 2 will be around €60. Now the cost of living might seem high, but the average salaries are quite good, allowing you to enjoy the city.
Germany in general.
Okay, so I'm assuming the euros, you know what? Like, yeah, let's just assume the euro is stronger than the dollar a little bit. If it seems right about the same as American living at this point, you know, it seems like just right on the spectrum. So if you're like wanting to have a new experience, but you know, like don't care that much about the cost of living, I think Germany may be a good place to consider living in. But if you're actually looking towards like like extremely lowering your cost of living, you might have to look at a place like Thailand or Singapore or like countries like those. But yeah.
Has a high quality medical care and healthcare system. Frankfurt offers public and private. Annual income and preference will depend on what is offered, how much is covered, and what you pay.
It's compulsory to be insured in Germany, so the public care is offered, but private is only available for those who are eligible for things like a certain income or job type. One big difference between the two is the speed of care is much better with private insurance. If you're moving with a company, talk to them about your coverage, but overall, Frankfurt offers good hospitals and clinics if you need them.
Frankfurt is...
Yeah, so, you know, Europe is notorious for having, you know, inexpensive healthcare, as opposed to America. You know, they charge you $4,000 for an ambulance ride. So I can imagine, you know, German healthcare would be very hospitable to people living in Germany, especially for citizens, but, you know, especially if you have that private healthcare that they just mentioned. But we're halfway through this video. I'm going to stop that for now and perhaps continue it in a future video. But let me know what you guys think so far of this type of video. I want to do future videos of countries that I travel to, but for expats specifically, because what we want to do is you know, promote people who want to change their environment. If they're unhappy with how they're living, you know, this is just the first of many. Unhappy with how they're living, maybe it may be like a financial decision. For a video like this on Frankfurt, it's right about the same as America, right on that cusp. So, if you want to drastically reduce your cost of living, we're going to have to react some future expat videos to some other lower cost of living countries. But first, I'm going to start off with countries that I've traveled to, and then we're going to, get into the meat of why you, what could actually, drastically change your cost of living. But if you guys like this video, please, leave a like. If you like this style of content, if you like content like this, travel content, AI, modern Gen Z problems, subscribe, because there's going to be a lot of videos like that. And if you have any thoughts on Frankfurt, Germany, and if you want to talk more about Frankfurt, Germany, I did have like a good time in Frankfurt. Leave a comment. If you are living in Germany, let your thoughts be heard to the Americans out there. Should they come to where you live in Germany, or should we just stay in America? But yeah, hope you guys have a good day.